December 17, 2019, the first case of COVID-19 was discovered.
The biggest quarantine
One
in
patient
history.
tested positive for coronavirus.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
First death being reported now from Karnataka.
We declared a public health emergency.
1 year later, the world has changed, so have we.
The global COVID-19 pandemic has had huge disruptive effects on the normal life for schools, students, and parents. The impact of closed schools and children stuck at home with little or no access to learning. The effect has been very devastating. Experts estimate that a whole year of learning could be lost, meaning a whole cohort of students could be permanently lagging behind in their learning. That is why the Department of Education should in any way to continue schooling despite pandemic.
While the coronavirus has infected over 3,220 people in the Philippines, there are a total of over 24 million elementary and high school students in both public and private schools that were affected with adjustments of education. In the times of pandemic, no longer lines at school gates, no excited students wearing colorful backpacks, no children crying as parents leave them in classrooms. But the school bells are ringing, and it is through unprecedented means. This prompted the schools and the school managers to decide, through the Learning Continuity Plan, the appropriate learning delivery modalities that is suited to their own context. In most cases, especially in our location, there are 98% of our schools that resorted to printed modular distance learning. The question now is, are we ready? This prompted confusion since a sudden closure of schools happened in March and there are no even clear notice yet when the school year will open and how the school year starts, considering widespread epidemic flash in all parts of the country. As the school year progresses from its opening last October 5, more and more challenges were encountered in the day-to-day delivery of the basic education services. So what really is the problem here? There are actually a number of daunting challenges that needs to be addressed and overcome for distance education to be efficiently and effectively delivered. The challenges encountered to wrap up are poor internet connectivity, problems with family support, and also there are concerns in the learning modules, the pedagogies itself, the lack of technological capability of the personnel, the stakeholders' preparedness, as well as the issues on assessment. Number one is the preparedness of stakeholders in the new normal of distance education. The first question is, who are our stakeholders? We have our students, teachers, school administrators, parents, and external partners. The question now is, who is ready? Are they ready? Are all our stakeholders ready for the modular distance learning delivery? How prepared are our students, teachers, school administrators, parents, and external partners for distance learning? Distance learning will require a different mindset for all our stakeholders. For the part of students, how will they cope with the longer periods of that being with classmates, for physical and social interaction? For teachers, how will they be able to manage stress of teaching and for the student learning from distance? And for the school leaders, how will they manage the systems, the processes, and operations in remote educational delivery? For the part of parents, how will they manage the additional new responsibility of children going to school at home? For the external partners, and how will they be able to sustain the support to their resources of school? How long can the teachers and also the student endure their responsibilities, knowing that any one of us can be at risk at any time? The second problem is technology. The question is, are we technologically prepared? Do we have a well-structured ICT infrastructure that can accommodate our learners? Given the kind of situation that 85% of our learners are coming from marginalized and poorest areas, how can technology be a matter of learning when resources are not available? Are all our teachers and learners equipped with skills to shift from traditional technology-based teaching and learning? Are technological gadgets available at home? Are the geographical location of learners considered as hotspots to access strong signal connections? The question now is, what are effective technologies to deliver educational content and materials that will be used in our schools and learning centers? Are these technologies fit into the context of learners? What are technologies, whether high or low tech, work best in distance education, even in face-to-face learning? The question of technology actually revolves around how to engage students in their own self-learning, and today in the new normal, how would technology work in the learning process? Considering our communities, our learners, and even our workforce is not prepared and equipped for this kind of situation. How did pedagogy play part in the new normal? Well, the curriculum or the subject comprising a course is the same, whether classes are face-to-face, remotely delivered, or through homeschooling. The pedagogy or the method and practice of teaching is going to be different for each. Think of the difference between having a meeting where all participants are in the same room and a meeting via Zoom or Meets where all participants are plugged in remotely. Participants in the online meetings require different attention, protocols, and methods of managing meetings. Think about how much more tiring participating in such online meetings are done in face-to-face meetings. Teaching such distance classes will require new methods and practices. But how did our teachers adjust to these pedagogical processes? In the same way, keeping children engaged over long periods of time without physical activity to break up the learning day will be a major challenge, most especially for young children. So the question remains on how to engage children creatively in learning, particularly distance learning under a new normal, without the presence of features to check on how well the learners are doing at home. TVL, or Technological Vocational and Livelihood Education, being focused on practical skills and work readiness, makes remote learning particularly challenging. Practical skills are often acquired through learning by doing, which occurs in school-based workshops and laboratories or through hands-on experiences at workforce. This negative impact will significantly be higher for marginalized children, such as those living in affected areas by conflict or other protracted crises, the migrants, refugees, and forcibly displaced minorities, children living with disabilities, and children in institution and in most schools. One major challenge is the distance education of children with disabilities and the slow learners. There is also a major shift in logistics for education as education services shift from classroom-based to distance learning, whether online or through learning pockets. And what happened now? The schools are running out of resources due to overwhelming pricing or cost of printing and equipment. The abrupt shift from classroom-based to modular-based teaching learning designs had eventually led to imbalance in expenditure, resulting to scarcity of school resources and finances. External stakeholders has been supporting now the schools, but even with supports from partners, still this would deploy sustainability and the reproduction of materials before the end of different quarters. The most challenging concern now that schools and its stakeholders experience is the ability to generate more resources to supply the book printing of learning materials in different schools. So what else are the problems encountered in the content of learning materials? To mention the few are the erroneous contents due to rush preparation of the materials. Also, the key concepts in the learning materials are limited, and that the activities as well as the exercises provided doesn't suit to the multiple abilities of the students or the learners. The language use and the degree of difficulties to different types of learners were not considered. The assessment designs in the materials are not sensitive to the abilities, interest, developmental preparedness, and available resources at home. Learning is moved now to the students' homes, and parents will somehow take on the role of teachers. Due to these changes, several concerns has been raised, such as the kind of instruction that will be done at home, how will the parents manage their children's learning, especially the toddlers, the kindergartens, grades 1 and 2, and what class schedule will full-time working parents follow. There are also concerns on how will the parents be able to manage to help their kids learn while looking for ways to earn. And also another concern was how can they teach their children if they have not finished tertiary education. So what is the challenge here? Most of the parents could not attend to their children because they are still working, and most of the parents could not assist their children because they find it hard to understand the lessons because it's beyond their comprehension. The most difficult is how would the teachers ensure that learners are learning from the modules, and how would teachers ensure that all of the learners are given equal attention considering that there are still more tasks ahead that consumes most of their time. Unlike in physical classes, where he can assess how the students comprehend with the materials given or presented, distance classes somehow limits the social cues for him to see if that student has absorbed the lesson. Even under new normal, the teachers are required to deliver and retrieve the learning materials, print and sort learning materials for the succeeding weeks, prepare weekly plans, prepare supplementary or remediation materials, attend to LAC sessions and trainings, check papers for formative tracking, follow up students for activity of the week, and lastly, they have to conduct home visitation. There were also concerns from the teachers that most of the learners are situated on locations that is not reachable by internet, and phone signals is difficult and not accessible by any transportation. With some changes in the new normal, there are still concerns that needs to be addressed. So what are the actions that needs to be taken in order to minimize the challenges? To answer that question, a holistic and proactive approach is recommended to ensure immediate crisis remediation as well as smooth transition to the new normal. The first one is to understand the new reality we have today. We have to conduct reassessment of school processes and mechanisms against the existing response framework to understand scope and scale of impact on educational system. Also, we have to mitigate immediate impact of crisis from a policy, structural, social, and financial perspective. We have to disregard what doesn't work well and improve what contributes to success. Based on revision also, we have to define education system, new reality, and determine the gap to reach future target state. Number 2 is to build capabilities. We have to invest in building human resource capabilities and make sure in uniform teaching standards and skills for educational delivery. We have to focus teacher development program on most essential, specifically on the needs and gaps in the implementation of the new education system. It is also important to ensure availability of support for distance learning and to develop strategies and promising practices and innovations on different learning platforms that is available for us today. We have to reinvent your model or our model. It is important to activate network of experts, innovators, and companies that is going to support model redesign. It is important to involve all the stakeholders in the reinvention of systems, processes, and mechanisms so that they have ownership of the processes. It is also important to engage with parents, teachers, and students in designing new normal. Also to focus on equitable access to education for the vulnerable and disadvantaged, less privileged individuals. In the time of crisis, they are the most important. In these trying times, we are compelled to come up with innovative and creative ways to implement our plans and to troubleshoot challenges. And together, we can make better things happen.